Hello class, welcome back. This module covers chapter 4 of the textbook. This chapter is about do-while control structure. If you recall, we mentioned that we have three basic control structure. Sequence, we covered it at chapter 2. If then else structure, chapter 3, and loop, which is third control structure in this chapter on coming chapters. We're gonna look what is gonna happen if we don't have loop control structure. We're gonna look at the do-while loop. In this textbook we have two types of loop, do-while and do until. In other programming language we have for, we have while, and we have do while, but here on this textbook, since we do not deal directly with the syntax of any programming language, since we do not deal with any programming language, and the textbook and the logic that we discuss here is independent from any programming language, just we're gonna go with do while and do until, and also we're gonna learn about simple control counter control loops, SCC, simple counter control loop, or CCL. I'm gonna refer to that one as a CCL, that you're gonna see it later on. Let's look at it. What is gonna happen if we don't have loop? As you see here, we have a flowchart, we have a pseudocode. Let's look at the pseudocode. I am more comfortable with pseudocode. Some of you may be more interested in visualizations and flowchart, but it's easier to work on a pseudocode. Okay, we're gonna start. We have a read statement. We're gonna read 6 variables. We're gonna add those 6 variables, and we're gonna write the total, and we're gonna stop. As you see here, I have 6 variables. It's not big problem to write n1 to n6 and add here n1 plus n2 plus this up to n6. What is gonna happen now if I have 1000 variables? If I want to say here read n1, n2 up to n1000, it's gonna take a lot of time to write it down and a lot of space. If I want to say here sum equal n1 plus n2 plus up to n1000, it's gonna take a lot of time to write it down and a lot of space. So this is not very efficient way of doing it. This is going to tell you how you're going to do it in a calculator in order to add 6 numbers. As you see here, we're going to be able to repeat those statements, enter a number, hit the plus sign on the calculator. So this is whatever the statement that we want to repeat. Let's look at it. We're gonna start. We're gonna have an initializations here. We have 2 variables. We're gonna initialize them. This one is the flowchart for loop. So we're gonna have a connector symbol first. We're gonna come to this condition. We're gonna check. We want to add 6 numbers. We're gonna check if the count is less than 6. If yes, we're gonna read. We're gonna add it. We're gonna add 1 to the counter. We're gonna go up. Again, we're gonna check the conditions. And if the condition is true, we're gonna be in a loop. As you see here, we are in a loop. How many times? We're gonna be 6 times in this loop. And at the end, we're gonna come and we're gonna write it and we're gonna stop. Let's look at the, again, at pseudocode. We're gonna start. We're gonna initialize these 2 variables. Count is going to be initialized with 0. We're going to come to this statement. We're going to say count is less than 6. 0 is less than 6. Yes. We're going to get inside the loop. We're going to read data. We're going to read 1 value, the first value. Then we're going to add it. We're going to add 1 to the counter. The count was 1. 0 here, sorry. The count was 0 here. So we're going to make it 1. We're gonna come to undo. We're gonna go up here. We are in a loop here. Now the value of count is 1. 1 is less than 6. Yes. We're gonna read the second values. We're gonna add it. We're gonna make count is 1 currently. Plus 1 it becomes 2. Undo. We're gonna go up here. 2 is less than 6. So we are in a loop, and we're gonna repeat these steps 6 times. As you see here, just I have one variable data. I have one variable data, and then I'm gonna read 6 value into this variable. So rather than to have 6 variable, I have one variable. Rather than to have 6 variables, we're gonna have one variable, and then we're gonna read 6 value into this variable. Now, if I want to add 1,000 numbers to each other, the same thing. Just I can have one variable data, and 1,000 times I gonna repeat this loop 1,000 times, and I gonna read 1,000 value into this variable data. I gonna add it, and I gonna add my counter. Again, pay attention to the flowchart. This is the way that we gotta show a do while. We're gonna have a connector symbol first, a diamond shape. If the diamond shape is true, if the condition that we have here is true, we're gonna be within the loop. So this is very critical to understand. The steps that we want to repeat must be in a true portion of the loop. The statement that we want to be repeated, it must be in a true portion of the loop. If the condition is false, we're gonna get out of loop. If the condition is true, we're gonna get inside the loop. Let's look at basically a generic do while loop flowchart and pseudocode. This is the flowchart. Again, as you see, we are coming from here. We're gonna first have a connector symbol. We're gonna have a conditions here. If this condition is true, we're gonna repeat those statement E. As long as this condition Q is true, we're gonna repeat those statements. So you see that we are in a loop. And if this condition is false, we're gonna get out of it. This is another basically chart of it. This is vertical presentation. This is horizontal presentation. So you are coming from here. You're gonna observe the connector symbol. We're gonna come to this condition. If the condition is true, we're gonna be in a loop. If the condition is false, we're gonna get out of the loop. And this one is the pseudocode. We're gonna say, as long as this condition is true, we're gonna repeat this statement. If this condition is false, we're gonna come after undo, and we do not repeat the statement E. This is the counter control loop, or CCL. Counter control loop, or CCL. As you see here, we have 2 types of counter control loop. One of them is going to be increment approach, and this one is decrement approach. Let's look at it. Again, we're going to initialize count with 0. We're going to observe the connector symbol. We're going to check the count versus, for example, 5 or 6 or 10, whatever number of time is it. If this condition is true, we're going to repeat those statements. We're going to repeat this statement, and eventually we're going to add 1 to the count. The count was 0 here, isn't it? So 0 plus 1, the count becomes 1 now. We're going to repeat the loop. We're going to come here. Now we're going to say 1 is less than, for example, 5 or 10 or 6, whatever is it. Yes, we're going to get, again, repeat those statements. The count, it becomes 2. 2 less than 5, yes. We're going to make it 3. We're going to go inside the loop here. 3 is less than 5, yes. We're going to repeat those statements. We're going to make it 4 here. 4 is less than 5, yes. We're going to repeat those statements. We're going to make it 5. We're going to come here. 5 less than 5, no. We're going to exit the loop. So as long as the condition is true As long as the condition is true, we're going to repeat the statement within the loop, and if the condition is false, we're going to get out of the loop. This one is going to be called incremental approach. Why? Because we started with 0 and then we make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is increment approach. And this one is decrement approach. So let's assume I want to repeat my loop for 5 times. So here we're going to initialize count with 5. We're going to observe the connector symbol. 5 greater than 0. Yes, we're going to repeat this statement. We're going to subtract 1 from 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. Now the value of count is 4 at this moment. We're going to be in loop. Come back here to the connector symbol. 4 greater than 0. Yes. We're going to repeat those statements, make it 3. 3 greater than 0. Yes, we're going to repeat this statement. We're going to make it 2 here. 2 greater than 0. Yes, we're going to repeat this statement. We're going to make it 1. 1 greater than 0. Yes, we're going to repeat those statements. 1 minus 1 is 0. 0 greater than 0. No. So we're going to get out of the loop. This is the payroll problem. Again, we're going to start. We're going to initialize it, count with 0. We're going to have 10 employees that we want to calculate payroll for them. We're going to say 0 here. We're going to initialize it with 0. 0 is less than 10. Yes. We're going to come and we're going to rate. We are familiar with this code, isn't it? If you remember, we had that one on the previous chapters. So we're going to calculate the payroll. So we're going to rate name, social security hours rate. If the hours is greater than 40, we have to calculate regular pay, overtime pay, and add these two to calculate the total pay. If there is no overtime, just we're going to have a simple calculations and we're going to write it. And we're going to add 1 to the count. So we are done with the first employee. Now we're going to go for the second one. Now, we started with 0. 0 less than 10. We make it 1 here. We're going to come here. 1 is less than 10. Yes. Now we're going to go for the second employee. Then we're going to make it 2 here. 2 is less than 10. Yes. We're going to go through all those steps. And finally, we're going to come to the point that we're going to make it here is 9. 9 plus 1, it becomes 10. We're going to come here. 10 less than 10? No. We're going to stop. So again, as you see, this is, pay attention, this one is very interesting. As you see here, I have a connector symbol first, follow with a diamond shape. Yes, I am in a loop. Here I have a diamond shape, follow my connector symbol, then yes and no. This one is a if, this one is if, and this is do while. So you should be able to distinguish between if then else flowchart and do while flowchart. This is the do while, and this one is if. The best way to understand it, because the connector symbol come after diamond shape, and I have yes and no, or true or false, on and off. Here we have first connector symbol and then diamond shape. And in a true path or yes path, we're going to have a bunch of statements that it's going to be repeated. This is the pseudocode for it. We're going to start. We're going to initialize it. We're going to say 0 is less than 10, yes. We're going to rate those as those variables. As you see here, I have if. If is completely inside this do while. Pay attention to the indentations. The indentation is going to help to view the code, to improve readability of the code. If you pay attention here for if, They are aligned, and this is completely within this do while. Anyway, we're gonna read here this for variable. We're gonna say if the average is greater than 40, we're gonna calculate the regular pay. We're gonna calculate the amount of overtime pay. We're gonna add regular pay and overtime pay. We're gonna calculate the total pay. If there is no overtime, this is a simple calculations. We're gonna write it. We're gonna add 1 to the count, so we're gonna be able to do the second employee. Undo, we're gonna go up. 1 is less than 10, yes. Then we're gonna make it 2. 2 is less than 10, yes. 3 is less than 10, yes. 4 less than 10, we're gonna continue like that one. And then we're gonna say 9 less than 10, yes. We're gonna make it 10 here. We're gonna come here. 10 less than 10, no. We're gonna get out of loop and we're gonna stop. This is another flowchart for averaging. So we have, for example, 5 numbers and we want to average them. We want to find the average of 5 numbers. We're gonna start. We're gonna initialize count with 5. The sum, which is accumulation of those numbers, is 0 at this moment. Look here, the connector symbol and then diamond shape. If the diamond shape is true, I have a bunch of statements that it's going to be repeated, isn't it? Look here, we are in a loop. We are in a loop here. We are in a loop here. Okay, so we're going to come here. The count is 5 at this moment. 5 is greater than 0, yes. We're going to read the first score, whatever is it. We're going to add it. We're going to subtract. Can you tell me this one is an incremental approach or decremental approach? Very good. This is decremental approach. Every time that you're going to see the variable count or the counter, it's going to be decremented or subtracted by 1 generally subtracted by 1. We're going to call that one decrement approach. Decrement approach. So we're gonna subtract it. So 5 minus 1, it becomes 4. We're gonna come here. Now 4 is greater than 0. Yes, we're gonna read the second number. We're gonna make it 3. 3 greater than 0. Yes, we're gonna read another one. We're gonna add it, subtract it 2, and so on. And then finally, we're gonna make it 1 minus 1 is 0. 0 greater than 0? No. We're gonna come here. So we read all the 5 numbers. We add all the 5 numbers. And now we're going to say sum divided by 5. We're going to calculate the average. We're going to write the average and we're going to stop. This is the pseudocode for it. You're going to go through it yourself. If you have any question, please let me know. Send me an email. As you see here, pay attention here to the indentations. All the statement within the loop, it's going to be indented here. This is just for readability purposes, but it's required. You never ever write a code, a pseudocode, without indentation. If the indentation is gonna help to improve your code, you must use it. This is another type of loop that we're gonna call it header record logic. So rather than to have the number of times to repeat the loop as a constant, we're going to use it as a variable. Let's look at it. We're going to read a variable tot_num. We're going to initialize count. As you see, I have connector symbol and diamond shape. In a true path, I have some statements. So this one is a do while. This one is a do while. We are in a loop here. So as you see here, so far, what we mentioned, for example, count less than 5, count less than 10, or count greater than 0. As you see here, now rather than to say count less than 5 or 10, we are saying count less than tot_num. Whatever variable you read here, if I have 5 here for tot_num, I'm gonna say here count less than 5. If I read 10 here for Tottenham, I have here count less than 10, and so on. So this is header record logic. We're gonna have one extra read at the beginning, and this extra read at the beginning, since this is at the beginning, we're gonna call it header record logic, and it's gonna tell us how many times we're gonna repeat the loop. So we're gonna read this variable, we're gonna initialize count with 0, we're gonna check the count versus this variable. If the count is less than this value, we're gonna repeat those statements. We're gonna increment count, and we're gonna be in a loop. Eventually, the count is gonna be either equal to Tottenham or greater than Tottenham, and we're gonna get out of it. This one is for decrement. Why this is for decrement here? Because -1. The same logic that we had here, it's gonna be applied here. Let's look at this payroll problem with the header record logic. We're gonna start read total emp, the total number of employees. If you remember on the previous flowchart, we had the total of employee was 10. Now this time I may have 5, I may have 10, I may have 15, I may have 500 employees. So here, this code is much more flexible to do. So we're gonna say read.emp. This is the header record. We're gonna initialize count, connector symbol, and diamond shape. This is do while. So count equals 0. We're gonna say 0 is less than .m. Assume .m 5. 0 is less than 5, yes. We're gonna read those things. We're gonna go through all those steps. We already familiar with this one. We're gonna make it here 0 plus 1, 1. We're gonna come up here. 1 is less than 5, yes. We're gonna make it 2. 2 less than 5, yes. We're gonna make it 3 here. 3 is less than 5, yes. We're gonna make it 4 here. 4 less than 5, yes. We're gonna make it 5 here. 5 less than 5? No, we're gonna get out of it. As you see, I repeated 5 times. For 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. When the count becomes 5, we get out of loop. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 5 times. This is the pseudocode. Again, pay attention to the indentations. Do while. Statement for do while. Look at the if. Indentation for if. Indentation is must. You're gonna ensure you're gonna always use indentations. This is required for the purpose of this course. Pay attention to indentation. Always use it. You are required to do it. There are deductions if you don't use it on the test or on any homework that you're gonna submit. Again, go through this code. If you have any questions, we already did that one, you know. Please let me know. This is another averaging problem that we had before. If you remember, the averaging problem that we had before was for 5 numbers. Now here I'm gonna have it for n numbers. N, it could be 5 numbers, it could be 10 numbers, it could be 20 numbers. As you see, the header record logic is much more flexible. So the number of times that loop is going to be executed is not coded into program. If you remember, on a previous problem, we had here 5. Here we had, for example, check for 5 here. But here now we have n. This n, it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 20, whatever is it. If I have here n 20, I'm gonna compute the average of 10 numbers. If it's 20, 20 numbers. 10, 10. 5, 5. That's the beauty of header record logic. Again, this is the pseudocode. You're gonna start, you're gonna read a name, you're gonna have, for example, 4 grades. You're gonna say count is 4, sum is equal 0, 4 greater than 0, yes, we're gonna read the first grade for test 1, for example. We're gonna add it, we're gonna subtract it, so 4 minus 1, 3. We're gonna come under, you're gonna go up here. 3 is greater than 0, yes, you're gonna read the second grades. You're gonna add it, you're gonna make it 2. So this is the way that we're gonna go, and eventually I'm gonna make it 1 minus 1, 0. 0 greater than 0, I'm gonna get out of it, and we're gonna calculate the number, the average that we have here. And finally, we're gonna write it and we're gonna stop. This is the averaging problem with no data condition. What is gonna happen if the first time that I'm gonna read, there is no data to calculate? We're gonna call that one no data condition. No data condition means the first time that I read something, there may not be any data to process. So here we're gonna say a star, we're gonna read name and n. N is the number. Here it's gonna tell me if the n is if the n is less than or equal 0. If the n is less than or equal 0 means I have nothing to process. If this condition is not true, means n is greater than 0, and it's not negative. So it could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 20. Then I'm gonna come through this route and we're gonna calculate it. This is the pseudocode for it. As you see here, we're gonna call this one no data condition. No data condition means if the n is equal 0 or less than 0 means we have nothing to process. But if the n is positive, then we're gonna come to the else and we're gonna do these calculations. This is again Visual Basic. We're gonna ignore anything which is related to the Visual Basic in the book. Again, keys to success. Make sure that you're gonna do all those things that you are supposed to. Make sure that always you're gonna check the due date files, and enjoy the class. Thank you very much, and see you next class.